Hello friends, welcome to another vlog or just regular YouTube channel, whatever you want to call it. This one is a little bit heavier and more serious than any of my previous vlogs or videos have been. This is a subject that I've wanted to talk about publicly for a long time, and I do over on my other social media channels, but sometimes just writing on Instagram stories, and I don't want to touch Facebook posts because no one likes Facebook posts anymore. It's just not, you can't really get your point across as well via like Instagram DMs or whatever. So I just wanted to make this video to kind of talk about this subject, talk about what happened in the most recent, or I guess not most recent anymore because there's been a lot of Supreme Court decisions, but in the big Supreme Court decision concerning the Dobbs case, just kind of not a warning, but just like a caveat to this video. I'm going to be getting into depth, not necessarily about what abortion is, because that's a whole different topic, but just kind of about what happened and didn't happen, what this means for a post-Roe world. However, I do want to caveat this with, if you have had an abortion or things about abortion trigger you, you might not want to watch this video, because I don't know how that would affect you and your mental health, and I never want to talk about things without giving a warning about these heavy subjects, stuff like that. So I'm always glad to dig into heavy subjects, but I did just want to kind of caveat that with, this is a heavy subject, and if that's something that you don't want to be a part of, this may not be for you. However, I'm glad that you're here. I want to welcome you into this conversation, and I want to have this discussion with you. Obviously, if you want to discuss this further after you watch this video, I'd be happy to take any comments in the comment section. You can reach out to me via Twitter DM. That's really mainly how I communicate on social media, or however else. So, and if you would, for both sides of this argument, please keep the comments, if there are any. I doubt there will be any, but if there are any comments in the comment section, please keep them friendly and respectful, because I will be deleting any harassing or attacking comments. So let's get into it. All right, so let's start with talking about what did happen on June 24th. So on June 24th, the Supreme Court of the United States, also known as SCOTUS, which is what I will be using to refer to them, because saying Supreme Court of the United States 800 times is really annoying. So SCOTUS overturned the 1970s decision Roe v. Wade, and subsequently the following case called Casey versus Planned Parenthood in a 6-3 decision. The original Roe v. Wade decision said that women in the United States had a constitutional right to abortion, and Casey v. Planned Parenthood said that no state could put an undue burden on a woman seeking an abortion in that state. The overturning of these two cases did one thing, and one thing only. It returned the power back to the states to decide what each state's individual abortion laws would look like. Instead of having a broad federal mandate, having these justices make a decision for the entire country, they correctly interpreted the Constitution to say there is no explicit constitutional right to abortion, and therefore it should be addressed in each individual state. After this decision on Friday, many states, including my home state of Oklahoma, had trigger laws go into effect, and many other state governments signed new abortion law. As of right now, there are new abortion laws and restrictions in 9 different states: Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Ohio. In 3 states, Louisiana, Utah, and Kentucky, these abortion bans are temporarily restricted, I assume because they have laws that will trigger, but they didn't put an emergency clause on these trigger laws or bills or whatever whenever they were signed into law. So let's get into, what did Roe do? What did Casey v. Planned Parenthood do? What did these Supreme Court decisions do that has been undone? So what does the overturning of Roe and Casey do? It does return the power to the states. They're the Supreme Court justices decided there is no constitutional right to abortion, as stated in the Constitution. It does allow each individual state to make their own abortion laws. As we've already seen, there will be many states who take this to the very, very, very most restrictive aspect, and states that take it to the very, very, very most unrestricted aspect. You'll see states like California continue to have a legal abortion through all 9 months, and states like Oklahoma completely ban it with very few exceptions. So it does, thirdly, allow each citizen to be involved in their state's decision instead of the 9 justices making these decisions for us. So what's encouraging to me as someone who is very passionate about this issue is that, granted, Oklahoma's laws have already been triggered. However, we have the opportunity continuing into future legislative sessions to make our voices heard. If we see our state of Oklahoma try to pass legislation that we feel is unjust or unfair to women, we can make our voices heard. It's not defined by what these 9 justices said is in the Constitution. These justices said, hey, this is not in the Constitution. Here's your complete state sovereignty over this issue. And so it will encourage, at least I think, it will encourage individuals to get involved in their local and state politics when it comes to this issue. Okay, let's talk about what this doesn't do, because I feel like there's a ton of misinformation. I hate that word. What other word can I use? I feel like there's a lot of confusion out there about what this Supreme Court decision does and does not. It does not make abortion illegal in the United States. All it does is give this right to make these laws and decisions back to the states. It does not mean that women will be unable to seek abortions for life-threatening pregnancy issues. Now, let's talk about this for a second, and I do want to dig into this a little more. One of my biggest questions that I got when I asked on my social media page, what should I talk about in this video, was, well, there are women who are, have ectopic pregnancies and have, septic uterus or have miscarriages who they need, their body doesn't expel the miscarriage naturally. They need abortions. Yes, agreed. And let me just say, I wouldn't define those treatments. I don't even want to define those treatments as under the same umbrella as abortion, because abortion, and this is the one time I will define it and talk about it, is the intentional, to be quite frank, it is the intentional ending of the life inside the mother's womb. Now, when it comes to treating an ectopic pregnancy, or those other instances that I talked about, there are some cases in which, yes, an ectopic pregnancy has to be ended and the baby's heart is still beating, and that's horrible. However, in that case, as tragic as it is, we all recognize it is much better to lose just the one life instead of the life of the mother and the baby. Because in the case of an ectopic pregnancy, the baby will not survive. That means the baby has developed in the fallopian tube instead of her uterus, and there's no developing in the fallopian tube. So if the baby still does have a heartbeat very early on, that's horrible and tragic, but the longer that is left untreated, the more likely it is that the mother will continue to develop life-threatening problems and potentially die. So as tragic as that situation is, we and the law do not see an intentional abortion falling into the same category as treatment for a life-threatening issue for the mom. So let's get into this a little bit more. One of the big things is women are not going to be able to get life-saving care because all abortions will be made illegal. This is not true. And sure, I suppose that a state could make literally all abortions illegal, no exceptions for nothing ever, but I guarantee you the true pro-life community will not be behind that. And by true pro-life community, I mean those who actually are pro-life, pro-woman, pro-baby, pro-life, instead of just pro-birth, because I do grant you that there are just pro-birth people out there, and that's not okay. The real, true, caring, kind, loving, pro-life community would not stand behind a complete and total ban with no exceptions for life-threatening emergencies. Exactly 0 states so far, through their trigger laws or new abortion laws, have 100% outlawed abortion. There are still exceptions to the law in all of these states for life-threatening conditions to the mother. So let's talk about an emergency abortion. These are done to save the life of the mother. If the doctor determines there's a credible threat to the life of the mother due to the pregnancy, the abortion is not illegal. And that has never been illegal. It's never even been frowned upon by the pro-life community because, again, we are pro-life. We are pro-woman and pro-baby. And we want to do the best that we can to preserve both lives. But we recognize that, again, if something like this were to happen, and it does happen daily, it's better to lose one life than 2. Okay, so let's talk about a very viral post that's been going on Instagram. I'm sure there's many like it, but this is the one that I specifically saw and did respond to on my Instagram. And I'm just going to read this DM to you that someone got. So someone with a bigger Instagram platform was sent this message on Instagram. So here's the DM. I don't have a platform, so I can't reach people like this, but you can share this. I work in the hospital redacted on a small NICU and labor and delivery floor. Our trigger laws went into effect immediately after the Supreme Court decision. Of course, we had a woman with an ectopic walk in at 11:30 p.m. last night. We had to basically sit on her until the doctor could speak with a lawyer. Her ectopic pregnancy ruptured, and then she did not get her procedure done for another 9 hours because the doctor was working with a lawyer for so long, trying to work around the laws and not lose his license. By the time she had her procedure, she had over 600 cc's of blood in her abdomen. She almost died. I am so scared of how often we as nurses are going to see things like this now and not be able to do a darn thing about it. We were all livid at huddle last night. Several of my coworkers were in tears. So let's talk about this. So if there's a doctor out there who did not familiarize themselves with the trigger law, which I assume was not passed, the day before the Supreme Court made this decision, I assume it's been out there for at least a while. If there's a doctor out there who didn't familiarize themselves with these trigger laws well in advance, or, and this is just my opinion, and this opinion is shared by many medical professionals I've spoken with, if there's a doctor out there who feels like they can't make a swift, life-saving decision, this isn't the fault of others. This isn't anyone else's fault. I know there seems to be gray areas surrounding this, and I'm not saying I know everything about the subject. I don't work in the medical field. I have plenty of friends in the medical field, and I have talked with a lot of them, especially since this decision was made, and especially since this post went viral. But I feel like, and again, this has been backed up by other medical professionals, I feel like making swift, life-saving decisions is part of a doctor's everyday job. And so I actually originally went to college to be a nurse, and when I realized how much pressure there was, and when I realized, how many, again, quick life-saving decisions you have to make sometimes, I was like, I don't want that, because I wanted to work in the NICU, and I was like, I don't want that regardless, but especially with like tiny, precious, fragile little newborns. So I feel like it's already part of the doctor's job, so why is it just now becoming an issue, I guess is my question. So that's how I feel about that. And I had it post sent to me, and I read it, and I had to respond to it, and that's just kind of how I feel about that. Again, ectopic pregnancies have never and will never fall under the scope of illegal and illegal abortion. And if there are any doctors out there who don't know that, and again, granted, states could make their own laws about that, but that is not okay. And like I said, the pro-life community would not stand for that, because treatment for ectopic pregnancy is not the same as an intentional abortion. So let's move on. A lot of people have said, well, the United States is an outlier on this issue and we aren't, globally caught up with the rest of the world on abortion laws. I would agree that we're a global outlier on this. However, I think it's in the most progressive way possible. Most European countries ban abortions after 12 to 15 weeks, depending on the individual country's laws. So yes, we have much different abortion laws than the rest of the world, but up until Friday, you could get an abortion through the 9th month of pregnancy in a lot of parts, in a lot of different places in the United States. Now, I assume it's still the case in those states like California, most of the coastal states, the more progressive states, as a lot of people like to refer to them. But again, it's not like we're in the Stone Ages compared to the rest of the world. We are actually much more progressive on this issue than most of the rest of the world. So I was asked, are you saying that you're okay with an 11-year-old carrying and birthing her rapist baby? And what about the emotional and mental trauma that girl might endure? First off, I want to say rape is a horrible situation. I don't know of any sane, normal, good, functioning person in society that would disagree with that. I would like to point out that this reason accounts for less than 1% of the reasons a woman has gotten an abortion. And I'm assuming you're looking at even less than 1% or less than 1% if you're just talking about underage girls. Like I said, rape is horrible, and I am very lucky and privileged to not know the trauma of that. I've never been in that situation. And I assume the trauma associated with that, just the act itself, but even more so, becoming pregnant with your rapist baby is just unimaginable for those of us who have never been through that. I'm a firm believer in the fact that two wrongs don't make a right. Letting a rape victim get an abortion will not rid her of the trauma of that abortion. There's still a ton that she will have to work through mentally and emotionally and probably physically. So on that note, let's think about the life inside of her that has already been created. That baby did not ask to be there. That baby did not ask for what happened to him or her. That baby did not ask to be created. But the baby's there. It was created. And by the time the rape victim knows about this baby, he or she has already developed a heartbeat, has other facial features and other appendages. This baby also has their own unique DNA, which makes them their own unique person. So the bottom line on this is that this is a horrible circumstance, and I don't think in any way any pro-lifers, again, true actual pro-lifers out there, care less about the life of an 11-year-old rape victim, but we also recognize the validity of that human life inside of her, and we don't view it as fair to strip that baby of life. Next subject. The foster system is already overrun. This is one we've been hearing for so long. And if you're someone out there, first off, who grew up in the foster system, is still in the foster system, who has ties to the foster system, I want you to know that, and even on the subject of, being the baby, oh my goodness, it is snowing outside, I apologize. On the subject of even being the victim of a rape, you're wanted here. If people have been using you in your life as a reason to justify abortion, and in turn you're taking that as, wow, I would have been better off aborted, dead, not here, not in existence. Please don't think that. Your life is just as amazing and wonderful as anyone else's. No matter how you were created, your life is meaningful and special and wonderful, and we are all glad you're here. So saying the foster system is overrun is not a valid reason to take someone's life. Just as we aren't okay with rounding up some random foster kids who are already in the system and ending their lives, we view the unborn and the born as worthy of the same life. They both have a reason to live. And I think this assumption too, people are like, oh, well, I'll just end up in the foster system. You're just assuming that because someone is born into poverty or into, unwantedness, anything like that, that their life might have difficult circumstances. And that's fair to assume, I guess. But since when is it like, oh, you aren't going to have the life that I deem as perfect or as I deem as worthy, so you would be better off aborted? That makes literally no sense. The foster system is overrun. I agree, and I wish it wasn't that way. However, saying that there are already too many kids in this broken system, we may as well kill off the others that might end up here and lead a hard life, is a terrible argument in my opinion. One more thing on the foster system thing that I have heard a lot is, well, if you're pro-life and if you are celebrating the overturning of Roe, you better be signing up to take in all the foster kids and help all the homeless women. And yes, absolutely. There have been a lot of things that my husband and I have done before and after this decision, and I know a lot of families have done before and after this decision to try to alleviate the burden of the foster system, to try to financially help those in need. However, you can still be anti taking the life of an unborn child and not solve all the world's problems. My least favorite thing is when people say, oh, Elon Musk, or oh, Bill Gates, you have all this money, why aren't you solving, like, if you just donated all your money or even a fraction of your money, you could solve world hunger. It's not the responsibility of one person. If we all work together, yes, maybe we can solve world hunger, maybe we can unburden the foster system, but you can be anti X, Y, or Z and recognize that you can't solve all the world's problems. We can all do a small part, but we don't have to do it all. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to talk about that real quick because I hate that argument with my whole heart. It's just not a valid argument because there are plenty of things that we dislike. There are plenty of injustices that we dislike, but we can recognize that we all have to do a small part. A lot of people are worried that IVF and fertility treatments will be affected. And this is one argument I could possibly get on board with. I see the argument of, well, if the the preborn life in the womb has personhood rights, has the right to life, so does a frozen embryo. However, a lot of anti-abortion laws are not touching that. I do see the logic behind that. However, I will venture to say, and this is where a lot of pro-lifers might not agree with me, and again, I have no backing in the medical field, so I could be completely wrong on this. I view it as a frozen embryo is just that. It's just a frozen embryo. It needs a functioning environment, aka like the lining of the uterine wall, to implant into to actually become a human. And so I kind of differ from the pro-life community on life begins with conception, and like I do to an extent, but it's also like if that egg and that sperm connect but then never implant, then it just it goes away, like that fertilized egg can't become or can't fulfill its final destiny, if you will, without implanting into the woman's uterus. So that's where I kind of differ on that. I'm like, well, yes, I guess it could technically legally have personhood rights, but you can't just take an egg and, as far as I know, and I could be very wrong, you can't just take an egg and a sperm and put them in a petri dish together and then expect that to become a human. So one of the last things I want to talk about is the financial aspect. Who is going to pay for the maternity care? Who is going to support these families? And if this was actually about the children and the babies, then everything would be free pretty much. It seems that the money is out there. All these celebrities, all these corporations give their money toward, abortion stuff. I don't really know what else to call it. So why can't some of these people recognize that abortion's wrong and steer their money towards life-affirming care for these women, for food, diapers, formula, all the work that these pregnancy centers do on like little to no budget? I guarantee these celebrities and multi-million-dollar corporations could also just throw a little bit of money that way. One of the other things I want to touch on is children with special needs. As I said earlier, if you are, part of the foster system, if you're the product of a rape, that you're loved and you're wanted, let's talk about special needs, because that's something that people have talked about a lot, is you don't know how hard it is to raise a kid with special needs. Their life is miserable, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's just so hard to think that way, and it's such a dangerous precedent to set, because who are we to decide whose life is miserable and whose life isn't? Again, like, if we are privileged enough to lead a life that we deem as happy, great. That might not be the same for someone else, So I don't think it's fair to say, Down syndrome kid or a trisomy kid is less worthy of life than a child born seemingly perfectly healthy. Because as we all know, and this is kind of encompassing all those subjects, we all are going to lead hard times in our life. I keep saying my life has been relatively easy, and I think it has, but there's definitely been hard times. But if my mom knew different things that I would endure, if her mom knew different things that she would endure, would it have been better off if she was just aborted so she didn't have to go through that? Would it have been better off if I wasn't here just so I didn't have to know the ugly, cold world we live in? No, because then no one would exist. We all go through hard times. And so it's just like, some people lead lives harder than others, I will grant you that. But I guarantee the Kardashians would look at my life and be like, oh my gosh, she lives in a 2,000 square foot house and she has to go to work every day? Like, ugh, gross. Like, they might not want to lead the life that I live, but I'm perfectly happy with my life. And so it's just, who are we to decide, that person might lead a non-typical, more difficult life? Let's just end it now. It just doesn't make sense. So there's a lot more things that I could go into about this subject. Obviously, I wish I could go on and on and on, because there are a lot of topics surrounding the subject. I mostly wanted to touch on the arguments that have come out of the Dobbs decision, the ones that have been the most viral and prevalent since Friday, and address those. Again, they aren't all the subjects I want to talk about. They aren't the only things to talk about and discuss when it comes to the subject of abortion, but those are the ones that I saw most often on social media and in the news and in just my conversations with people in general. I do want to end with one final thing that I've seen, and it is, you don't have the right to push your religion on me. This is a religious topic, separation of church and state, blah, blah, blah. Not once in this video did I mention my faith. You don't even know what faith I am at this point if you only watched this video, because I've never mentioned it. I've never stated it as a reason that I am against abortion, and many pro-lifers don't even associate their faith explicitly as the reason that they are pro-life. It is because we believe in the scientific evidence that shows that life begins in the womb. And whether that baby is, just implanted itself in the uterine wall, or like my baby, only hopefully 11 weeks away from making his way into the world, that life is a life. And so, no, I don't think I have the right to push my religion on you. I would love if you knew Jesus, loved Jesus, accepted him as your Savior, and came to church with me on Sunday. But I'm not going to sit here and beat you over the head with the Bible and shove it down your throat, because that's not how that works. So yes, you are correct that no one should be shoving their religion down someone else's throats, but I don't think anyone is when it comes to being pro-life. Now, if they are, that's wrong. But nowhere in the Supreme Court decision, and nowhere in a lot of the major, social media outlets I've seen, has anyone referenced their faith as the reason that this was overturned. And especially when we're, for the purposes of this video, talking about the Supreme Court decision, obviously nowhere in that decision did they reference Christianity or any religion as the reason for overturning Rome. So that's kind of all I have for right now. I know this is probably a very long video, and if you're still sitting through it, thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions you would like me to address in maybe a future video or even in the comment section, feel free to reach out, feel free to comment, feel free to message me on Instagram especially. That's where I do most of my messaging and communication. But I'm an open book. I think the beauty of this is that I don't think the pro-life side has it 100% completely right, and I don't think the pro-choice side has it 100% completely wrong. I think there are plenty of valid emotions and feelings and counterpoints on the other side of the aisle, and I want to keep this dialogue and this conversation going. When we get inside our own echo chamber and when we surround ourselves only with like-minded people, and we don't take the time to have those hard conversations and get outside our comfort zone and leave our echo chamber for a little bit, that's how we just implode on ourselves as a society. So I am never afraid to talk with you about this subject, as long as we can both have a civil dialogue and not attack each other and not mudsling at each other. And I think it's a very healthy conversation to continue, because I think we can continue to move forward towards a more harmonious, for lack of a better word, society if we can keep these conversations going, if we can keep having these hard topics discussed with each other, and if we can see each other as more than just our political opinions. And I will agree, some people have really trash opinions, but that doesn't necessarily define their worth. So I'm gonna wrap this up with a nice pretty bow and just say thank you so much for watching. If you've made it to the end, you are a trooper. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel. There might be more videos like this in the future. Hopefully we're getting back to the fun, lighthearted stuff soon, but I'm happy to talk about more hot topic subjects like this in the future on this channel if you want it, so let me know. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye, friends.